Appointing former Democratic aide Ron Klain as the, quote, Ebola czar to take on the Ebola crisis. And here's what we know about him so far. He was former chief of staff to both Vice President Joe Biden and Al Gore. He was a lawyer for Al Gore during the 2000 recount, and he was a lobbyist for Fannie Mae. And he was played by Kevin Spacey in the HBO movie Recount. But with no medical or healthcare experience, is he the right man for the job? Here for a fair and balanced debate, radio talk show host Richard Fowler and Michael Warren from the Weekly Standard. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for being with us.
Morning. Morning.
Richard, I'll start with you. You say he is the right man for the job. Why?
Oh, here's why. First, I think this is what, when you look at the midterm election just 2 weeks away, it is the job of one party to criticize endlessly, and it's part of another job of the other party to show leadership. But if you talk to a lot of doctors, and I've talked to a couple before coming on this morning, and they all say you want somebody who's not necessarily a medical professional, but somebody who can make sure the trains run on time with this Ebola crisis. Remember, this government has no control over America's hospitals, so there's really no teeth here. It's just it's information gathering and making sure you're moving all the trains and moving all the pieces at the same time. And I think Ron is very capable of that.
And Michael, the federal government has failed to stop Ebola from coming onto our shores and failed to protect healthcare workers from being exposed. Now they think Frieden's not necessarily the right man for the job. They need this new Ebola czar. Is this just showing that they think it's more of a political problem than it is an Ebola problem?
Sure. If you look at Ron Klain's history, he's a political operative. He's a Democratic political operative. He was working in the Senate on the Judiciary Committee when Clarence Thomas was being confirmed and all of that chaos there back in the 90s. So I think that it tells you a lot more about the White House's perception of what they need to do with this Ebola crisis, that it's a PR crisis, that it's something that they really haven't explained that well to the American people. But it doesn't really sort of justify a new position. I actually called the White House on Friday to try to figure out what exactly Ron Klain's position will be. What office will he be in? I don't get a lot of calls back from the White House, so I didn't hear an answer. But I don't think they've been very clear about who he's answering to and what exactly his authority is. That's a real problem if we're actually dealing with a public health crisis, which that appears to be what this is.
Richard, is this part of a broken promise from the president? I mean, he did say he wouldn't have any lobbyists in his White House, and Klain was a lobbyist for Fannie Mae.
Well, he was a lobbyist way before the restriction. The president did have a timeline of that restriction, but that's neither here nor there. I think the truth of the matter here is that this federal government, nor could anybody, done anything to stop Ebola getting to our shores, right? And the fact that this is not necessarily a crisis. Let's be very real here. There's 3 individuals who have been diagnosed with Ebola, all stemming from one hospital, all stemming from one passenger who lied on his entry papers into the United States. So what this president is doing here is showing the country that he can lead, and what Ron Klain's job here is pretty simple: to make sure all the trains run on time, to make sure that the president's getting the most up-to-date information, and to make sure that the 3 individuals that have Ebola are the only 3 that have Ebola. But there's been no new diagnosed cases since these 3 individuals have been diagnosed, and I think that's the most important thing to understand.
Okay. And Michael, I'm going to give you the final word on this. The president held a rare meeting on Saturday about Ebola, yet this new Ebola czar was missing. Do you find that bizarre?
Yeah, again, I don't really know what this Ebola czar is going to be doing. I mean, Richard keeps talking about, making sure the trains run on time. I don't really think the problem is coordinating with agencies. The problem is incompetence among our public health officials. So, wait a second.
That's exactly the problem. The problem is we need to make sure there's coordination happening from the federal, state, and local level. The healthcare workers need to be coordinating with management. Management needs to be coordinating with state healthcare officers. State healthcare officers need to be coordinating with the federal government. It's exactly what we need here.
Right, administrative help and being an expert at implementation, but it appears that being chief of staff is not necessarily administrative position either. Both of you, thank you so much for your time today. We'll have to continue this during the commercial break. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.